Good evening. It is a crappy, rainy Monday night, about 7 PM, and I really don't want to be out here, but time is an issue, and I need to crack on and get this thing welded up before the weekend, so I can go on the trailer early Sunday morning up to Shropshire, to the body shop. So I need to reinforce all that area, and then when my sill panels turn up, slap a sill on the top. I still haven't got that wing off, and there's still the boot hinges to attend to, because they've done what lots of MGZRs and Rover 200s do, and they've rusted out about there. It's not too bad on this one actually, but you can just see the seam is starting to blow apart, so I really want to take that all apart, grind it out, and then put it back together properly. But the first step is to remind myself what I was doing down here. All of the hydrate 80 has gone off nice and hard, and I remember now I needed to close that part off and then start fabricating my return section to go in there. I'm also trying to work out what size steel that is. I thought it was like 2mm, but actually having measured it now I think it's about 1, so that's good because I've got a load of that in Zintech, which will be nice. That flange I opened up to put the hydrate 80 in there, so I need to tap that closed, and then it doesn't have to be done before it goes to the body shop, but I'll be derusting as much of this as I can and then seam sealing it, and more Jotun 87. But all in all, again, I know I found some rust here, but the underside of this car is really good. No nasty surprises, which is very reassuring. Nice clean floor pan. So I will take out the interior panel now so that I can get this foam insulator and noise sound anything out, because I don't want to set fire to the inside of my car. And then I'll also see how much of this is actually visible from inside the car and whether or not some of the welding can be done from above. So yeah, we shall see. Fast forward about 10 minutes, I got that interior panel out and took the foam insulator pad out of here, and that's actually the bottom of the B pillar area, so I can't weld into it from above. So the only way to chop out all of the rust and make a decent job of this repair was to do something that I really didn't want to have to, which was to disturb the sill yet again. And basically I've cleaned off the paint and then cut 2 slots, one either end, and then not all the way through, but just enough to make sure that I can bend it here and I'm not distorting the whole panel as I bent that flap up. But now I've got access into here, and I've been cleaning up the metal using a combination of a Dremel type tool with a die grinder bit on the end, and also this finger sander which I bought after many people recommended them to me, and it is handy, but it doesn't have anywhere near as much grunt as that thing has. That is a nasty tool, and you have to be careful because it bounces off and grabs at anything that it can. But now I can put a plate in here. Unfortunately there's no way I can access that area from above, so it's all going to have to be done by welding upside down underneath. And the other annoying thing is that there's so much cavity wax, as soon as that gets hot that's all going to start melting onto my welds, which is quite annoying but reassuring. And what I could feel with my fingers is that the inside of the sill is absolutely perfect, which is why, unlike the other side of the car, I'm not chopping this off. It's just too good to do that. So anyway, I'm going to go find some steel and make a pattern out of cardboard and then snot it in there. Made myself a template. Ah, oh, bastard. That will go in here like so. With a bit of hammering, that will close up. Should be okay. I'm going to go get some zinc primer, just toss it in there now, the aerosol weld through stuff, and then I can crack on with the welding. Got 3 heavy tacks in there. This is not shaped to fit perfectly. It's quite an agricultural type of, I always say agricultural, and that's not really fair. What I mean is I'm kind of half bodging it because I can't be bothered. It's late, I'm tired, I'm gonna need dinner. It's my first day back at work in a shitty, crappy June. No, was it January? Yeah. And I'm tired. Blinding myself now. Gonna shove as much of this in here as I can while it's all chopped apart. You can tell when there's still cavity wax in here because the paint just sort of, or the paint brush just slides over the top of it. So that's quite reassuring. I'm not going to bother doing the back side of that, because that'll all burn off when I plug weld through from this side, so it's just a waste of paint. It is altogether a nicer day and nicer conditions for car bodging. Well, it's actually a Wednesday, so I should be at work, but I had to work from home to wait for a delivery of furniture to come. And I've done lots of work this morning and last night, so this afternoon I'm going to crack on with the car. The red oxide has all gone off under there, and actually looks like a halfway acceptable repair, even though it was kind of done at night in the rain upside down while I was getting annoyed with things. Last night when I was at work, I folded up some repair sections for my lower edge of the inner sill and stiffener, which will go in here like so. I've deliberately left them long because the bottom flange gets hammered under, rolled under to form a lip, but I didn't know exactly where that was going to be yet, and I need to be able to fit this in my joggler tool to stamp out the plug weld holes. So I'll weld this in and then hammer the lip over afterwards. So that's those two. I've made more than I need, so the first thing to do is weld them together to make one full length, put the holes in it, chop it to length, and I also want to see if I can replicate the two sort of grooves that would have been in it over here, which locate the emergency jack. So I'm going to crack on, weld that, trim it down, put the holes in and fiddle around. Once again, I'm using the James's patented metal former. So that's just to clamp it straight while I weld it. I'm only going to put 1 or 2 tacks in here, then unclamp it, and then I can take a look along the line and see whether it's all okay. That step's in the wrong place, but it doesn't really matter because that bit will probably all be cut down short and hammered to fit the car, so I'm not bothered. But the bit I do want is that corner in there, so I'm going to tack it here and here, then I can adjust the rest of it, then I'll tack that bit, and then finally I'll weld it both sides, grind it smooth both sides, and then offer it up to the car. See what that looks like. So it's kind of straight that way. Ignore this front edge, look at that back edge, and that's pretty damn good. And then this way, that's also pretty damn good. So I'm going to tack that where it is now in here, and then weld it. I'm going to turn the heat up a bit as well, because they're a bit weak. I don't think there's even any need to weld from the back side. Maybe a bit there, that's penetrated quite nicely. Yep, happy with that. I'll grind that down and then offer it up to the car. Here we have my now single piece sill section reinforcer, whatever you will. You can see just how much the car sweats in this crappy concrete garage. I really want to knock it down and build a good one, which I will do at some point in the future, but until then we'll just have to make do. That will go in there. That's all going to work. So I need to chop it off about there. down here, I'll have to reshape that bit and then knock it up to fit, but that should all be good. Happy days. I've just been to the other side of the car and looked at the bottom edge of the sill and where the jack locates, and I've just taken some reference measurements and marked them on here. Basically this has a groove, like convex on this side, either side of the rain channel, so that bit has to stay flat, and then this bit has to be brought forwards about the diameter of that screwdriver end. So I'm going to put that in here, other way up, and beat down into it with the back of that, hopefully making a dent which I can then put that in and smooth it off to make it look factory. Just been up to the compressor and put my plug weld holes in. Again, it's done them at 5mm because that's all that tool can do, and because this is quite chunky steel and so is that bit that I'm going on to, I'm going to drill them out to 6.5, so I've got more heat going through before the pool of weld fills it up, and that way I should get a nice weld. Right, a bit more jiggery pokery, and we've got this in broadly in position. When you do this sort of stuff, or when I do this sort of stuff, I have to think what is the most important structure or line to get right. And at this point, it's actually this surface here and that groove, because the repair sill is going to come down over and then be plug welded underneath onto that. This I've left long so I can hammer it round underneath. So if the length of that isn't quite right, I can sort it. And it's got to look horizontal all the way along the length of the car, so I think I'm about there, and I've left this long and I've bent it out so that when it comes to welding I can just hammer it in and then hopefully do seam welds, and it should look quite neat. So I'm going to do some final fettling and then crack on with the welding. Okay, it's going pretty well. All that front end's done, which is looking pretty good. Still smoking because I've only just stopped. Now I just have to do that rear section, and then I'll probably deburr it all, smooth all this off, tap that flange round, and then I can weld this down and set about painting all of this ready for the new sill to go on the outside. Okay, first stage of the welding is complete. I'm really happy with that, because I debated whether or not to even chop any of that out. I was thinking I could just rust treat it and leave it, but that would have been, well, a bit shoddy. You never would have seen it, but it probably wouldn't have lasted that long. So I'm glad I've done that. Now I'm going to go and get a cup of tea, then I'll come back and finish dressing all those welds, painting it, and rolling that bottom edge over, ready for the next bit. I might have said that in the last clip, but never mind. Right, I've had my cup of tea, and I have ground down the welds along that bottom edge. Then I've just nipped the surface off of these ones. These don't need to be smooth, I'd rather leave the strength in there. So now that's all done, I'm going to take the hammer and try and beat the edge over to form a rounded lip, same as got at the front of the car, like that. So I deliberately left it long, and that was why. So I'm going to probably give it a go with a hammer and see what happens. And then if that doesn't work, I'll try bending it with a pair of pliers first before I then try and hammer it. Well, I'd love to say this was going brilliantly, but it's not. Basically, it was a nice idea, but where I put welds in, the metal doesn't bend up, obviously, as much as it does in the bits where I haven't. So it's left it with a kind of wavy profile, and it's taking ages to get rid of it. Up here, I've kind of cured it by unfolding it again, and then being really careful how I hammered it. This last little bit though is being a right pain, and some of these waves I just can't get out. It's just sort of creasing the ends of the metal. So I'm going to keep at it for a while longer. I've also spotted a couple of welds where after I've ground them it's gone through, so I'll have to patch them with weld anyway. Which means if I'm doing welding, I could always build these edges up with weld and then sand them so that it gave a nice crisp edge. But I'll keep hammering to start, and hopefully I won't need to do that. Well, I'm not going to lie, it ain't perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. So we have a relatively crisp line all the way along there, good steel, I can weld back onto. When you actually look up that end, by the time it's got stone chip and sealer and stuff, you're not really going to notice it, so that's all okay. I am going to cover the whole lot in primer now, with red oxide. I'm going to clean it off with a wire wheel and then do that and then call it a day. And then either Friday night or Saturday, I'm going to have to fold that up, weld that back in, make my sill repair section, weld that in, and then I think that's all I'm going to have time to do. I'll have to let the body shop do the rear boot hinges and excavate behind the front wing and do all the rest of it. It's the end of the day for me. That's all done. Looks a lot better now. It's got red oxide on it. Missed a couple of bits, but all of that's exposed and will get covered in Jotun anyway. On the underside up here, if I can show you, you can see, but I've ground off any surface rust that was up there and put hydrate 80 on it again, rust neutralizer, rust killer, so that can go off overnight, and then when I next get an opportunity I'll come back and finish it. Good morning. It is Saturday, it's about 11 o'clock I think, and this is the last day that I have to get stuff done on this car before I have to take it to the body shop tomorrow. So I've just swept up down here and got the worst of it off. I still actually have quite a lot to do, and it's a bit scary because I have to weld that back in, that's not a problem. Then I have to join several repair sections together and weld it on under here to make it look nice. I've continued to poke around this front sill section and it's all really good, so I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm not even going to bother taking that wing off. They're going to have to take that wing off at the body shop probably to paint it, so I'll ask them just to check, and if there's any rust there, sort it. The one thing I'm not going to have time to do, which is a shame, is the boot hinges, which have just started to rust here, but compared to some of the other ones I've seen, that's not bad. So I'll just get them to clean all that up and treat it and rust proof it. And then there's that bit there that really needs de-rusting and treating, so I might do that this evening if I've got time. So the plan is to crack on with the welding down there, get all that done, bare metal the bits that I've played around with, and probably that seam under there, and then put Jotun on it. Then hopefully tomorrow morning that will have gone off in time for me to seam seal it all, and then it's loading up on the trailer and getting up to the body shop. The morning's starting off quite well because one of my cunning plans worked. That was when I chopped this bit. I cut slices here and here, and then I just grazed that bit with a grinder enough to make a point at which that would want to fold over, which meant I could open that up, put that plate in, and then put that back down without either having to spend ages making a part that was exactly the right size or risk bending the whole thing out and distorting the sill. So I've just bent that back up with my hands and it's closed up really nicely. So I'm just going to go and get a wire brush, take the paint off here. I'll weld the two ends first and then these two slots, and then I'll put some tacks across that bit just to strengthen it where I cut the metal quite thin. But yeah, that's probably saved me a good few minutes of faffing about. Well, last time I was down here, I did that lower seam, and now the red oxide stuff, Bonder primer, has gone off. I'm actually really happy with that edge. I thought it was going to look terrible, but by the time that's painted and stone chipped, it should look fairly like, well, it's not factory, but pretty damn good. And those indentations that I put in for the jacking points actually look like they're in about the right place and, you know, kind of original. I do need to fill in a couple of weld holes up here as well. They're not safety critical or structural really, it's just they blew holes because that was a bit frillier than I thought. So I'm going to get the welder and then weld all that up. So that's in there. I haven't gone silly grinding it back, but it's in and it's not distorted, so goal achieved. I'm going to start prepping a panel now to go in here. Okay, right from the outset of my videos, I've always wanted to do it as a kind of warts and all and realistic home DIY weekend bodging kind of videos of actual what's reasonable for people like me. All of this area I was actually really happy inside when I put my finger in. It's not rusty. That there is just surface. I'm pretty confident of that. So I cleaned off with a wire wheel all the way along here just to see what's going on, because it's stupid to go this far and not do anything. So I have, and what's good is that flange in there's that word again, this bit, that's all tosh full of seam sealer, and when I did the other side of the car, that's where I was putting the tiger seal. So I just cleaned all of that off, and what's the good news is that there's no rust actually in that joint, which is, well, good news. But there is on the surface of this bit. So here you can see some pitting corrosion, so I've just gone across that with a grinder to get that out. I'm also going to go back with a die grinder and really dig into it to try and flick as much of that rust off, and then I'll put Hydrate 80 on it. Now if this was a proper full-on resto like I did on the police car, I'd have chopped all of this off and been doing it again, but this is just a fun little car and it's actually not that bad, so I'm just gonna leave that as it is, rust treat it, and then protect it from the inside and drown it in dinitrile when I get the car back from the body shop. But yeah, it's just another observation of you know, what you can do at home and what might a proper body shop or, you know, professional restorers might chop all that off, but I'm not going to bother. I've also decided I will take the wing off because up here it is rusty, so it is going to need a new wing. So if that's coming off anyway, I might as well do it now myself, and then I can put Jotun in and around this area and really protect it. We have that well-known Rover fastening over here, a bit of shitty old rope. Nice. Wing off. Again, it really isn't bad, it's just that bit there, and that's the bit that impresses me, because that is in a hideous area of the car for constant dirt trapped against it and moisture. And yeah, it's basically rust free. I've made yet another interesting discovery about this car's history. If you look carefully, now the wing's off, you can see some grinding marks there. It looks like it's had a new front lamp panel at some point, because you can see the heat burn from the welding there. And also if you look right in the front there, so yeah, it's definitely had some action, this thing. And yet when I did an HPI, is it HPI? Vic check HPI, yeah, it's never been recorded damaged. And all of the like, that's the front upper crash, I don't know whether you call it a member, but those are the indentations to make it collapse in a progressive, controllable way, so that's never been bent. They've never done any panel work on that bit, so if it did have a tap in the front, it was incredibly light. So that's all good. I'm going to get the wire brush, clean all that off. In fact, I might do that while I'm still holding the camera, just so you can see that I'm not lying about the rust. In fact, I don't even need well, there you go. Absolutely nothing there. Perfect. So that is a huge relief. Result. So here I have more sill repair sections. I only need about the bottom couple of inches up to that line. I'm just trying to work out the most effective way of joining it to the car, making a nice weld, and then being able to grind it so that it continues that factory lip all the way along the underside of the car. Excuse me, coming through. So I want to join it about here and maintain that feature line. I have the sill section that I was going to put in the other side of the car, but then decided not to, so that's already half prepared. And then my intention weld that to that, obviously not quite like that, and then chop it about here, and then I've got that piece all nice is one section to repair the bit I chopped off there. I'll still need an additional piece higher up, but that's okay, we can do that easy enough. And then plug weld it up into here. I think what I might do is sit the new panel inside and then try and weld this onto it. The other option is I chop that lip off and then I chop this piece to about there, and then I weld that edge onto the top of here. That actually might be better to do, because then I can grind it smooth and I haven't lost any strength. Right, okay, I'll first of all weld those two together in my jig thing, and then put the plug weld holes in and get ready to weld. We are starting to get somewhere. So that's the tail end chopped and sitting on there ready. As we come along forward, it all looks quite good. One thing I've discovered is the flange on this is deeper than the original, which is a bit of a shame, because I have two options. One is to chop it off the same width all the way along the whole sill, which will be a pain and it will probably look wobbly and a bit crap, or just blend it in so it tapers out to about here, and then unless you've jacked the car up and you're having a good old look underneath, you're never going to know. The other thing is that lines up nicely, and I'm starting to think what I'll probably do is just upside down weld along that edge, try and nip that smooth, and then hopefully it'll look all right. On the other side of the car, obviously I didn't have that problem because the whole sill was done and that line looks really nice. The other option is, excuse the noise while I attempt to show you, the other option is to tuck all of this inside there and chop the existing sill back on the car and then weld into it. I still haven't fully made my mind up. I'm gonna stop what I'm doing now, go and get a bite to eat and have another cup of tea, and then come back and have a good look at it. Whoops. Yeah, have a good look at it, and then I can make my final mind up. Before I do that, I'm just going to put some Hydrate 80 on that bit where I exposed the rust at the front, and then that can be going off, so that if this afternoon I get to the point of painting the Jotun, that can go over the top of that bit. Progress is being made. What I've done is cut a slot in there which allows me to tuck that panel inside. Then I've chopped this outer skin off down to that swage line and then tucked this one up behind. So I've kind of created a joggled joint without the hassle of actually using the joggling tool. I have profiled this bit so that it tapers in now, so that should look good. That is joggled so it will sit over there. So what I'm going to do is tack it and push this whole seam up, which in turn pushes down on there, which acts as my clamp. Well, that's what I'm hoping anyway. And when you look from up this side and you look down and around, when that's pushed up, it actually looks quite good. And then hopefully the body shop can just make that look pretty afterwards, and hopefully it'll be an invisible repair. So I'm going to go get my, or do some final painting in the backside of here, get my scissor jack thing to push this up in places, and then get set for welding. I'm about ready to weld. I've got the jack and a brick wedged in, holding that up like so. And that's forced up so hard this is actually bellying out, but I don't really mind because just with some hand pressure I can push this back up and that will pull in, and it should get me somewhere close. So I'm going to do this as a kind of proof of concept and continue to wiggle about, or wiggle things about, not me, until it's looking pretty good. Then when I'm sure that it's going to work, I'll go at it properly. I'm going to put one up the front as well. It's mini recap time. I gave up with the brick and the screw jack because although it's nice and controllable, it didn't have enough oomph, so I've used the trolley jack, and basically what I've been doing is pushing it up in a few places, tacking or plug welding the sill onto the chassis reinforcer thing, and then also using the trolley jack to push this up so that the line of the sill is about right, because can you see here where it hasn't been done yet, there's a bit of a belly to it, so I don't want that. I want it all looking nice and smooth. So yeah, I've been progressively pushing up with the trolley jack and tacking it in a few places, and I'm just going to continue doing that. It's a slow process and quite a boring, time consuming, irritating process. I've now sanded off all my plug welds along there, like so. It looks a bit bumpy, but it hasn't been tapped up yet. And then I'm looking at this seam now and just probably going to go along with a chisel and just push this lip up into there, then run along and weld it. That's the plan. Well, that's in and welded. Again, not my best, but I'm kind of hurrying because I'm running out of time. But the good news is that I think be able to be saved with a bit of filler, and it's structurally sound and it's joined in about the right place, so acceptable all round really. Time to get dark o'clock, but I have been making good progress. I've welded the rear of that lip on, ground all the rest of this down, and it might look a bit shitty, but when you look at it from this side and you look at the curvature of the sill, it's pretty good because it's all higher than it needs to be, which means the body shop can toss a load of filler in there and hopefully hide my speedy fucking welding. But now I'm just going to clean up this bit and then weld that on there, weld that bit, a couple of plugs in here, and then that should be all of the welding done on this car that I'm going to do, and I can go and have a cup of tea, then try and get it on the trailer, which will be easier said than done because I've taken the seats out, so driving it too fast. Well, I think I'm about there. That's all done. I've also sanded off any sort of surface rust I had on that wheel arch lip, wire brushed in and around that closing panel, and then the whole length under there is now kind of roughed up, ready for some Jotun. I'm going to go into the house, have a cup of tea, then going to come back and paint the Jotun 87 on. That can go off overnight, and then I can seam seal it and load it up in the trailer first thing in the morning. It is actually night time now, and we've even got an owl twooting outside. So I've mixed up some more Jotun 87 and I'm going to just toss it on here. It's a rainy, wet, windy morning. I've got to get this car up to the body shop, but before I do, I need to seam seal like I did on the other side. So again, I'm using Tiger Seal. I'm just going to do what I did in the other video, which was finish off that rear corner and then do a whole strip along the bottom. So we have now full completed seal, whole length. Looks kind of standardish, and by the time the body shop's put a bit of filler over this nastiness here, should be good. So I'm going to get it back on the ground and try and load it onto that trailer in the rain. Still debating in my mind whether or not to have a BRM grille. If I do I have it orange or do I go colour coded? I think I'm going to sit on the internet and look at loads of pictures, or basically bow down to peer pressure. So if anyone has a strong opinion, let me know. Well, she's on. Actually drove on, which was a relief. I did have my emergency seat there, my spare wheel. Not the easiest for clutch control, but yeah, ready. Just need to put the ramps away, strap it down, and then off we go.